All right, so the next thing we're gonna get into is how to get the converter ready to go behind this big block Ford. Okay, so this is a Performance Automatic converter adapter kit, and I'm gonna show you something that I've done with my other vehicle, with my Bronco. This basically extends these out a half an inch. Your plate is about a half an inch. Well, it's a little over because you don't use a motor plate. But if I were to put that on there, so it extends the head of this bolt a half an inch. Well, if I just put it on there, right, that's going to be over half an inch. So what I need to do is I need to trim about 3 or 4 threads off the front of this bolt, and it says that in the instructions. When you get done putting these on, it should be flat, flush, because this is that half an inch, okay? So you got to trim a couple threads off. What you don't want to do is trim a couple threads off and then leave burrs on it. But this is their adapter kit. Okay? So let's read the directions just in case. Stud extension, crank pilot adapter, and 4 nuts. Four extensions, 4 nuts. Okay, put the original nuts on the converter, tells you that. Hacksaw cutoff wheel to cut this off. Okay, we're gonna cut those off, and then you want to take the nuts off. You want to put the original nuts on. Well, you get it from junkyard, it doesn't have any nuts on it, so whatever. But we'll put the nuts on, cut it off a couple threads, and then we'll pull the nuts off, and that'll remove any burrs in the threads. Okay, so once you get this adapter in there, these adapters in there, it's going to push your converter back. Okay, so here's your adapter pilot. However, most people have the problem with, this is the same size as the converter pilot. Okay, if they were to machine this down or make this hole deeper, then there would be nothing here, and it'd be 2 separate pieces. Because this stops at about right here, I think it's 100 thousandths. So if they were to trim that down or back this off anymore to get this off, to get this in there, then you push a converter back. But if they were to trim that off, machine this down or machine the inside out, because it's the same diameter, there's nothing left holding it. It just becomes a smaller ring and a bigger ring. All right, so what I've done is, it tells you to trial fit this. You put these on, you take this converter and you put it up against the flex plate. And if these, when they're on, don't meet up to the back of the flex plate, and I know this converter's heavy, but I'll show you. I'm just giving you a quick overview of what we're going to do. If these don't match up flush, then you need to remove this. Well, when you do, you're going to have probably 2 or 3/16 of an inch, like an 1/8 or 3/16 or 1/16 of an inch, and what's going to happen is this is not going to be centered in your drive shaft, and it needs to be centered because holes and bolts have a little bit of tolerance in them. And there's been some people that have wallered the holes out. I don't know if it was because it was already that way or they didn't tighten them good enough or whatever. I'll show you if I ever swap the motor in the Bronco, because I've been running the hell out of it, if I ever go to that 427 motor. But right now, this is my current project. All right, so what I did is I took a couple 1/2-inch washers. But if this is the size it needs to be, here's what I did on my Bronco, and it's working great so far. A 1/2-inch washer won't quite go in there. It's a little bit off. Not quite. See, that one hasn't been touched yet. It's not shiny. It's not silver. It's gold. These are grade 8 1/2-inch washers. You don't have to be grade 8. Be grade 5. They'll almost go in there, right? So that tells me it'll almost go up to there. Well, it's about this much off is what it is from matching up there. And I'm going to check this against a big block just to make sure. So I got on my grinding wheel, and I slowly spun this as it was grinding on it to make sure it stays round. And I made it fit in there like that. You can get a file and do this by hand, and it takes quite a bit longer. But basically it's almost there where it'll almost go in, right? I could force it in. And what I do is I take these two washers and I put them on here. And you're like, well, how do you know it's not left and right and up and down? Well, I take, let's say this is 2, it's only 1 because I got to work on this one a little bit. It'll take but a minute. I dump them 2 washers in there. Let's say this thing needs a 1/16 of an inch, about that much. Well, I wanted a little bit to go into the crankshaft, right? So I took 2 washers, and I did this on my Bronco on a small block Ford. I put 2 of them in there, and I stuck that adapter on, and it lined them up. I had them 2 in there just like that. It held them. I had a welding glove on. I fired up the welder, and I put a tack. You can either put a tack here, tack there, a tack there, and it was a long tack because it had to connect 2 washers together. I didn't want to just do one side because, you know, a little bit of weight will throw it off balance. It's probably not enough, but I didn't want to take the chance. I'm not that kind of expert. So what I did was I started right here and went bzzz, and put a long tack and a long tack and a long tack and a long tack. Okay, or you could probably tack the 2 washers together, but you want them flush. You don't want to accidentally get some slag on the backside and then it sits in there and wobbles. So take them 2 washers, put it on there, and run you a tack on 2 sides or all 4 sides. I just did a cross. See, all I did, and I haven't had any problems with a Bronco. I'd know if that converter's coming loose. Pulling them 35s with that 350 gear, now it's a 411 limited, and now I've got dual limited slips in it, and I tell you what, I beat the hell out of it. But it's making good bottom end torque because I don't turn it past 5,000, 5,500 at the most. Okay, I want torque to get that big bitch moving. All right, so that's what I'm going to do to this if I need to. But first thing I got to do is trim these. I got to take the motor off the stand, put the flex plate on it, torque it down, and then I've got to take this converter and set it up against there, and I'll make another video for that. But that's kind of the short version of what I did. And I hope that helps somebody.